Good morning.
Good morning.
Here we are, season 2, episode 11, after a brief Easter break filled with chocolate.
Yes, traditional.
Do you have specific taste in chocolate?
I mostly eat very dark chocolate, but I also do like milk chocolate.
Because
I don't like chocolate that is too sweet, but of course, a lot of the chocolate was purchased for the kids this weekend, so I did have chocolate that was quite sweet, both dark and milk. But my favorite, their new, so my go-to and what I have the most of in my cupboard is 85% dark chocolate.
oh wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I do like dark chocolate, but my wife has a specific preference for Cadbury's over most other types of chocolate.
That's a
And
childhood memory thing, isn't it?
it might be, and it can't be cold. It has to be like room temperature. I quite like cold chocolate.
I quite like the crunch of cold chocolate, but the thing is, of course, with the cold, it loses its flavor. So I don't tend to eat it that much,
Uh,
that often cold.
I did discover, and I forget and then remember, Reese's do chocolate eggs, mini eggs filled with peanut butter. Oh my god, they're so good.
Did you know
So good.
that's one thing I did in my class with students. It was the past 3 months have been the Cadbury Cream Egg 50th anniversary that they called the Golden Goobly
Yeah,
because they've done a big ad campaign for the past 3 weeks
they
with
have.
a golden egg, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory type thing.
I didn't eat a single. I do like cream eggs. I didn't eat a single one
It's intense.
over
Cream
Easter.
eggs.
I love them.
I think the business model of cream egg is most people are going to have one for Easter, and we should have our business running still at this point. Then a few others are going to have it at other points in the year.
Well, they did come up with a Halloween egg,
Yeah, that was orange.
a scream egg, SCREME egg. It was
For
green
anybody
and
who's not familiar with Cadbury's cream eggs, it's a chocolate
this
egg with a sugar cream like white and yellow to make it
fondant.
like an N. It's intense. It's very like you're like, wow, this is a lot of sugar.
Really? I could eat like two or three quite easily.
You can eat 2 or 3 of this stuff.
Yeah.
The last time I've only had it rarely, and I found it extremely intense
Oh, then you want to stay away from the Reese's eggs.
with the peanut butter inside. But that sounds
Yeah.
kind of more appalling. Not appalling, appealing. Sorry, it's very different. Almost sound the same, but they mean very different things.
Enough chocolate talk. Let's get into the questions.
Yes,
So,
because all the other audiences are going to get bored given they only watched 2 minutes of this.
yeah, yeah. Or we could keep chatting until.
Oh, no, just go. Sorry. Don't let me go on tangents. Ask me the question first, and then I'll go.
Okay, so this is quite a long, in-depth one, but I
Okay.
think it will appeal to you. Okay, here we go. I'm scared to hang out one-on-one with people. I'm scared they will not find me fun and interesting, and there'll be blanks, and I won't have anything to say. Do you feel that sometimes too? How can I fix that?
Okay, quick answer for the other people only watching 2 minutes. Yes, and there's nothing to fix. No,
You're going to need to qualify.
I can
There's
probably
nothing
elaborate.
to fix that.
I will, because we have an hour, and also that wasn't that interesting. But yes, please tell me.
There's
so give me the
nothing
question
to fix.
again. So
yeah, well,
no, there isn't anything to fix. So the person asking the question. Now we're gonna dive deeper in it, of course.
yeah.
But if I take the question literally, and being worried that sometimes there's blanks or uncomfortable moments, sometimes there's blanks and uncomfortable moments. There's nothing to actually fix. A blank, there's sometimes when two people hang out together and love each other very much. No.
That was a tangent. Come back.
Although we will go there because, of course, that's like one of the settings in which you're on a one-on-one hanging out with a person.
Mm-hmm.
There's romantic interests,
Mm-hmm.
Either stated or unstated. Unstated, I have a lot of experience with both, to be honest. I'll go in a tangent, and there's some other point because I had a very late night conversation with my brother and brother-in-law last week for Easter weekend after quite a few bottles of wine.
And I love the way you said bottles, not glasses, bottles of wine. That's how
Well,
you
yeah, I
roll.
mean, obviously, we didn't drink from the bottle. We had them in
No,
glasses.
I know, but the units of consumption were bottles.
Yes. Well,
I
by
actually
the
had,
end of the evening, there's been quite a few bottles that have been consumed, but we had them very leisurely, slowly during the evening. Just
yeah, well, just the French way of doing these. I actually had a glass of
and
red wine last
not
night.
even. Well, I was going to say not even that much. Okay, it's all relative. I think our not much from a family wise might be a lot for other people, but it wasn't from our standard level. It wasn't a gigantic night.
Okay,
It
that
was
would
a
be a lot for
pretty
me
good going though.
because I'm not a non-drinker, and I did have a glass of red wine last night, but
Mm-hmm.
that was enough. I couldn't. I can't imagine drinking any more than that. So, okay, there's nothing to fix. The
Okay,
blanks,
why
filling
don't
in the
you read the
blanks.
question again? Sorry.
I'm going to.
Thank you.
So, I'm I'm scared to hang out one-on-one with people.
Yes.
I'm scared they will not find me fun and interesting, and there will be blanks, and that I won't have anything to say.
Yeah.
Do you feel that sometimes too? How can I fix that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to quickly go into other areas than the one I just allowed that I just answered, because the real
Mhm.
question seems to be a lot more about how you are and how you feel with yourself
Yeah.
than about giving you advice to find interesting things to say, when I don't think that's where the problem or where the question actually lies. Now, that said, if you watch any of the episodes of us chattering together all the time, and by the way, so I did ask, I think we said just before we started recording, I asked my students this week to give us a few questions, which is cool. They did. I really appreciate that. By the way, if anybody's watching, thank you very much.
And this is one of them, actually.
Okay, great. Perfect. Yeah, one of them said after we got back from our break that she just like opened, because I gave them the links, and I had told them that we were looking for new kinds of questions and that we were revolving around similar types of themes. So I challenged them to find us new stuff. And I shared the link with the playlist of all the episodes so that they could see like all the questions. And one of them, and in the form, there's an episode that's embedded. So one of them just like looked a couple of minutes or a minute, I don't know. They just said that anyway, they enjoyed the energy of us chattering together. It seemed like a cool thing going on, which was nice. It's always appreciative, which is the main reward of teaching. The appreciation of our students.
Exactly.
Now, of course, I'm lost with what I was going to say.
I think you were going to talk about the break up the question. You were saying, on the one hand, it could be about learning and finding interesting things to say.
Oh yeah, no, this is what I was going to say. Interesting things to say. One thing that we keep saying all the time: read books.
Yeah.
You want interesting things to say? Read stuff. You'll have a lot of cocktail evening stories. Read interesting articles. Listen to interesting podcasts. Yep. Listen to Radiolab, and you'll have all sorts of random things to talk about.
Speaking of books, like, this is so badly lit.
Lemnisse, my name is why. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
No, you shouldn't. You won't necessarily. No. It's massively recommended to me by my mum, about a guy whose mum's Ethiopian and he grew up in the care system in the UK. And he thought his name was one thing, and then he discovered his name was something else, and digging into his history. And it's quite an unsettling read. And then I got this yesterday, which I'm so excited to read.
Stromboli Pizza Beastie Boys book. Wow.
It's the Beastie Boys book. And
that's big.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's written by.
That sounds really cool. Is that so is it a biography of the band entirely, or?
Yeah, it's Mike D and Ad Rock with of course, Adam Yap passed away like quite a while ago. I was really surprised at how upset I was by that. So this has been some high profile musicians who've passed away for whatever reason, and I've been like, upset about it. And that was one of them. I was like, why? I'm really upset about this, because the Beastie Boys have always kind of been around.
Yeah.
So, but again, this illustrates the point of having something interesting to talk about. Just explore, read books, read articles.
And just while we're on it, I am in the middle of Preacher, which is super good. This is
amazing,
crazy. There's a TV adaptation, which is quite different from the graphic novel that I haven't watched. We were just talking about it before we started recording. I am still reading Surveiller et Punir, which is Discipline and Punish in English, and this is just phenomenal. I'm close to the end, so I'm still progressing a little bit every day.
Someone else talked to me about that book.
I just opened this yesterday.
Oh,
so this is a big piece as well here. So, I mean,
jealous.
It's one of those that I'm like, oh, I should have read. But really, most people who talk about this book and talk about storytelling have not read the original. I have heard from someone saying that the original text is not all that amazing, but I guess I should read it really to. Is
that the main book by him?
This is the complete works of Joseph Campbell. I mean, this is his book. Yeah, it's his books with a preface from 1949, The Monomyth, The Adventure of the Hero, Torture, Initiation, Return. I want to read that. This is the stuff that so for anybody who doesn't know, this is the hero's journey, and the author of the hero's journey, where he theorizes, I guess, prophesizes. I mean, not prophesizes. Theorizes,
theorize,
that all the myths, stories, religions of the world, of human history, can fit into one model. And all main myth making and myths and stories and hero fit into this model that is called the hero's journey. And it's been used for a lot of different stuff like Star Wars and The Lord of the Rings.
Every single Marvel.
Every single religion, because he talks about religion a lot, actually. And he's a psychologist, I believe.
He went and spent time with
he's a psychologist.
First Nation, Native Americans, didn't he?
And there's a famous diagram, but this is the original text of like how he put together every single step of the journey and everything else going on. The idea that there is such a thing called a monomyth. There's one myth to rule them all.
You had to say that. Now, funnily enough, that was your episode 1 of Ice Cream for Everyone, wasn't it? All about the hero's journey.
We talked about the hero's journey a lot. Yeah, we did. And I was also encouraged. That was also nice. I talked to some students who told me they were listening to my podcast and that I should keep going with it, which is also really great and encouraging. So I published another episode of me playing a solo game, and I just recorded a new episode with somebody quite important in advertising, worldwide, really. And so that's cool. So I'm looking forward to posting that. So anyway, that's a completely different topic.
But this illustrates the point about having interesting things to say. Reading books, stimulating yourself with interesting material allows you to have something to say in a conversation. Yeah.
So you'd be surprised. What doesn't work about this answer, I believe, is that I don't think that's where the problem lies. Unless this person does nothing, which I don't think they do. I'm sure they do things. They consume stuff to a certain amount. By that, I mean media, books, podcasts, TV shows, even if it's only TV shows.
Yeah.
And what you're missing is to find somebody who's really, really deep into the same TV show you are so that you can talk about it. Because now with Netflix and everything else, we're not on sync necessarily with content.
That's true.
Or not necessarily interested in going and diving deep into it. Or not that deep, but just having a conversation about it. Whereas I geek out of things like that. So you and I know that we could have a conversation about an episode of The West Wing or something like it.
Yeah, it's true.
And we'd be perfectly happy to have a one-on-one for an hour about one episode of The West Wing.
And you and I aren't the only ones that could do that. No, we have other friends who could do the same thing.
No. We have other friends who could do the same thing. And to be honest, anybody who can't do things like we're doing now, I don't really want to hang out with them.
It's true. It's true.
Because and if they don't have this, so what I mean by that is I'm generally not that interested in hanging out with people who don't have passions or interests or hobbies in a way that they can really talk about it knowledgeably for a while. I'm happy to listen if I don't know anything on the topic. But, if I'm not into fishing, I know nothing about it. But if I meet somebody who's into fishing, I'm happy to hear them out. Now, on the long run, if it's not something that interests me, maybe that won't sustain itself. But certainly for the sake of one conversation and hanging out with one person, it really works out. But I think the heart of the question is really how you feel about yourself with the situation of being one-on-one and I don't know if it's anxiety or stress or nerves or a bit of all of those things, a bit of shyness, a bit of thinking I don't really have anything to say, or it's a variety of things. I think there's a couple that are literally in the question, if I remember correctly. I think I don't have anything to say, it says, right?
Yeah, I'm scared they will not find me fun and interesting, and there'll be blanks and I won't have anything to say.
Yeah, so you're afraid of what the other's going to think, and you're afraid of judgment, which to begin with is completely normal and human.
Yep.
It may or may not help, but obviously I'm terrified of people's judgments. Not that much, to be honest, but that is, sorry, I'm saying yes and no, because it is very much yes to be human. And then there's a combination of factors that help me kind of shrug it off a little bit.
Yeah.
One is it's something that we talk about a lot, which is training. By that, I mean coaching classes that I've done. By that, I mean meditation does help.
Yep.
Reading books around how we function and how we think.
Yep.
And then there's another huge factor, I think, is age and experience.
Well, I mean,
a lot stronger
and also,
for me when I was 15 to 20 to be afraid
also
of the
journaling
judgment of
as
others.
well.
Journaling helps me too,
yeah. But yeah, age and experience do make a difference. But having said that, I know people who are my contemporaries who seem unable to allow a conversation to have its natural ebbs and flows and constantly want to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, but specifically, this is one that I've noticed, and I noticed even a few days ago. I was on a date, and this is something that I've noticed with more journaling and meditation. I'm fine with blanks in the conversation in a way that I didn't used to. I used to feel that they should be filled. And now I'm like, it's a good opportunity to see if I'm enjoying just being with this person that I'm with.
So well said. Very, very well said.
Is this where we note down that I'm saying?
I'm going to write down the time. Because
are you writing 11:18? That won't help me if I'm editing the episode.
No, I'm writing 23 minutes.
Although it's
24 minutes.
It will help me. It will help me. Sorry, it will.
Well, it doesn't really matter. But I'm reminded of that scene in Pulp Fiction. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Where they go out together. John Travolta's character and Uma Thurman's character go out together.
Yes, yeah.
And they
Pulp Fiction in a very long time.
And they sit down together, and her character actually says, "Isn't it nice when you can just sit down with someone else and not feel that you have to say anything?" And she says it in a far more eloquent Quentin Tarantino-esque way.
Yeah.
But it does make the point about being okay with nothing being said. And I think partly from my work as a teacher, I've become comfortable with it as well. And I think also exactly like you said, the meditation, the training, the reading, sometimes, occasionally, depending on who I'm with, I will actually leave it deliberately to just see what happens because I'm intrigued. And I think you make an amazingly good point about seeing what's this person like. On a date, it can be really interesting because you want to see what happens when I don't say anything.
Funny enough, and I'm going to speak about this with very little knowledge, so I'm going to speak out of my butt a little bit. I've been getting back into philosophy, and I've been listening to the Philosophize This podcast, which I might have mentioned from the beginning. So I'm not at that author yet, but my brother-in-law that I was with for Easter weekend is really big in philosophy and very knowledgeable and studied it and still reads a lot of philosophy.
Wow. Maybe he should be a guest on Teaching Tangents.
Yes. Are you ready to do an episode in French?
Oh, no, I'm not. Damn.
Maybe we should have guests, though.
Terrible French A-level.
I can translate. I can actually literally can translate.
That would make it challenging. But yeah, you were having a conversation with him.
We were talking a little bit about Heidegger.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And Heidegger, so what we've talked a few times about, oh, by the way, I also had a student tell me they did the Landmark Forum, which is fun as well. So we talked about the Landmark Forum and Landmark Worldwide a few times. So that's one of the courses that we have in common in terms of, like, let's call it personal development. And a lot of their courses are steeped into not only, but in terms of philosophy, ideas that originate from Heidegger.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just before we started, opened a YouTube video of an old interview filmed, which is probably a rare filmed of. It's a Buddhist monk interviewing Martin Heidegger, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, wow.
And they're talking about being.
Of course.
And
Ontology, the study of being.
Ontology and the study of being. And Heidegger is a big prominent figure that's been bounced back on, and his work is dense. So I don't know much about it, and I've not read it. And Time and Being is a massive piece, because like a lot of huge philosophers, like the ones that are really like changed thought and for the course of humanity, most people don't know, but it is steeped in a lot of our culture. They create words, and he's German, and the German language has this quite easy ability.
Yeah, to just expand and create words.
Yeah, to create words by bunching them together. So one of the things he's very known for is the Dasein. And Dasein is a word of his creation that he defines, and he spends a lot of the book defining. And then a lot of other people got into discussing exactly what it means. And there's a lot more books about his thinking as well, and other philosophers that picked up in more recent time in the second half of this 20th century. And he has this idea of Dasein, it's da is here, and being, Sein is being. So he talks about being a lot. And the interview I was just looking at right now on YouTube talks about being. And it's about being there. And he talks about, so a lot of his work is on defining and understanding what does he mean by that.
Yeah.
But without going much further, just the definition itself, he talks about being there as a concept and as an experience. And there's an opportunity once and I guess it's a promise more than anything else for the person who asked the question, and anybody who's worried about what other people think when you're on a one-on-one or any kind of social situation. There's an experience that is available of just being there with the other person and sensing the being of the other person. We feel it. We feel we have a connection, and sometimes it's only in our heads. Like often, or it happened to me quite a lot, and I think it happened to all of us, that if I've fallen in love with somebody, or if I have a crush on someone, I have all the feelings that are there, and they're sometimes so strong and so clear, or not necessarily strong, but like so obvious that I feel like this other person must feel the same. Then it's kind of like disappointingly discover that the other person does not feel the same at all. So I would also, just to point out, to take with a pinch of salt, and to be a little bit careful on any feeling of being with someone. But there is something to be said that there's nonverbal communication that is both body language and something to do with being with another person, that you can sense a little bit more easily once you quiet down a lot of your fears. And meditation, journaling, and a lot of looking at how you function and better understanding yourself overall, whatever means, way, shape, or form you do that, helps with that. Yeah, that was my point. It was just an add-on to, basically it's illustrating and talking about the Mia Wallace Pulp Fiction quote on, isn't it nice when you could just be with somebody, which I believe the conversation turns into a bit of an argument, or heated, not heated, but a discussion, because John Travolta's character talks about then, well, that's just because the guy wants to have sex with the woman or something like that. Isn't that where it goes at some point?
Yeah, and
I think it's so long I haven't been seen.
I think it's also about the position, about who she is versus who he is, and his position and who she's married to. I think
she's married a very to interesting his boss.
Yeah, a whole interplay of hierarchy and position that I think is very
they
interesting.
talk about flirting and talking, because he's a bit like, well, I don't know how exactly to be with this woman.
Yes.
She's like feeling comfortable, and he's not comfortable at the beginning of the conversation. They decide to kind of very much talk straight and openly and very directly, which was really, it's a fun conversation. It's obviously engineered, but that kind of conversation, by the way, possible with people. It's possible to just talk directly sometimes, and sometimes it dispels, which is another way to talk about answering the question. Talking about your fears and what's going on, even though it feels embarrassing and you might be self-conscious about it, can really, really help a long way into dispelling those things as kind of silly fears that are not real, actual threats.
And also
What I mean by that is if you're with somebody and there's a blank and you kind of like feel you have nothing interesting to say, or you're wondering if you said anything interesting, you could say, literally say, well, it's funny, I just thought that I have nothing interesting to say. Like, are you enjoying your time? Or just, it's funny how I just noticed I'm worried that I want to make a good impression. It's kind of funny. And then the other person would go, well, it doesn't matter, whatever.
And my experience of when you openly share stuff like that is the other person relaxes, or the other person or other people will go, yeah, or I know what you mean, or like I've always been very surprised by how much I think my inner world is going on with me, and I don't realize that other people are thinking the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's
best case scenario. If you have a blank, you're feeling comfortable, you don't have to talk about yourself. You can just say, hey, I watched this video of these two random dudes talking together who are teachers, and they said da da da. So it's like the equivalent of like, oh, a friend, this happened to a friend, not me. But
that's true. You could actually do that. You use that video. Have you seen Teaching Tangents like that? You could, like, these two guys, they talk about.
You could just promote our video, and then that would dispel all your fears.
Well, that gets very.
This is not a promise.
I like it.
It's not a Teaching Tangents promise, but it could be. Maybe. I don't know.
It's a potential strategy. It could work. The self-awareness thing I think is really interesting because have you read The Game by Neil Strauss?
Yeah.
You have? And
yeah, I found it very uncomfortable. I didn't like that book.
It's a controversial book, and I think he's come a long way since he's written it, both as an author and as a personally. And I went to one of his book signings.
Like one of the big, if not the massive bestseller about seducing and pickup artistry.
You see, that's, I think on the surface, it's very much about
It's about relationships,
male pickup artistry, how one guy can shift his whole experience of himself and all of that. But I think at a deeper level, it's about what we're talking about. How do you get comfortable with yourself? And you can't.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I think a lot, in my opinion, a lot of the book is about trying to pretend that you're okay with yourself.
Yeah.
Till you get to the full point where you are actually okay with yourself. And that's, I think, the deeper point of the book, whereas it got so steeped in, oh, this guy's misogynistic and manipulative and doesn't like women and all of that. And the follow-up book, or it's kind of the follow-up book to that, The Truth, is way deeper, way deeper, and way more revealing and way more confronting. And when I went to the book signing, it's about how he got to be the way he is in relationships, going back to his parents and his mum and his dad and how he grew up and how forward.
This is what I didn't like about the game, and that I think you're pointing to as well, is that the game and a lot of what it promises, if you read the surface level, which is like just the easy, I think most of what the book is about telling the stories of all the techniques, and techniques are on top of fears, on top of yourself, on top of everything else.
Yes.
And it's trying to give you, tips and tricks and advice, which is exactly what I'm trying not to do, although it's difficult.
It's too top level.
Well, it's not dealing with any of who you are, and it's treating people like things altogether. Yourself like a thing that you're treating yourself, you're as a man like a machine. Treating others like machines that have dials and buttons, which on one hand can be very accurate and very interesting to consider, but it's like it's in service of something that is very very automatic and machinery like, which is part of the reason I found it quite uncomfortable. Now, it's absolutely correct, probably possible or more than possible, that some of the other stuff that I found uncomfortable is just like me confronting all the things that I have thinking about myself in terms of relationships and whether I'm attractive or not, and how I am, and like if would I be able to do the same kind of things, or the opposite, like I'm not that kind of person, and reacting to that, which is in itself also a reaction, and that reaction is built in from I would tend to say, I'm not sure I'm correct, but I would tend to say built in from the way that you develop yourself, your environment,
Mhm.
All the, particularly now that there's like heavily, there's so much opportunity to compare yourself with everything and everyone going
Yeah.
on in a
Yeah.
very tense culture where if you make the
Yeah.
wrong move, you're going to be canceled.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to have everybody shun you, and even more so if you're a young person, because you have
Yeah.
all of those fears as a teenager, generally as a young adult,
Mm.
because you're trying to fit in, you're trying to find your crowd, you're trying
Mm.
to find your group.
Mm.
And by the way, I'm making this as a bit of a list. I don't want to be dismissive, because I really, really mean this. This is really important.
Mm.
Those things are tough. It's tough to find who you are when you're just growing up and just basically
Mm.
beginning to find out as you're developing who you are. You're still not a complete person.
Mm.
I mean, you of course you are, but you're still developing. And I
Mm.
think that we develop until the day we die. Now, the
Mhm.
older I grow, I also do notice myself that I am set in certain things that I'm quite comfortable with, and I'm probably going to be less exploring less other things.
Mhm.
Yeah, just I think they're partly age, partly experience, partly, I might skydive one day. I haven't done that. I'm still interested in doing things I've never done before.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's skydiving championships, but if there is one, I doubt very much I'll take on being a world champion. Is it possible? Maybe, but the probabilities and chances are getting slimmer with age,
Yeah.
right? And you got to be.
But
Anyway,
trying new stuff, new experiences. I mean, he does talk
keeps
about
you
that.
trying new experiences, keeps you young,
Yeah.
and keeps you not set in the box with what's it called, the horses things, these
Blinkers.
huh?
Blinkers.
Blinkers, is that so that they can't see to the sides?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. So
He
every
does
time you
talk.
decide like I am or I am not like this, you just kind of set yourself into
Oh, that's great.
patterns, right?
Yeah. 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 I
That's why
think
I was talking
that's
about the horses things. You suddenly something that it could be something you could have done or couldn't been, you don't see as possible anymore.
that's very interesting because I think there's two bits about
I might
what
have
you
gone a
said.
bit fast on that one. I'm not sure if that was clear,
You
but I
well,
think it
I
was
think we'll
sort
come
of,
back to it.
or at least you
The,
don't see it anymore if you've got the blinkers on.
so the first point I was going to make is that in the book, the game, he does say like if you want to be interesting, do interesting stuff. Go learn to surf. Go take up a martial art. Go do something like, and this is the other point that relates to this, and this is more my opinion. Like playing guitar, I love playing guitar. I play guitar regularly, and it's exploratory, all of that whole adventure thing. And sometimes I just want to be good at something. I want to be good at the song straight away, but you can't. You have to go through the process of practicing and being and sucking at it so badly. And then suddenly, like 3 months later, it all comes together. That willingness to have, I guess it's called a kind of beginner's mind kind of thing, and being willing to try new
Beginner's
things
mind is a good
is really
one.
important.
We mentioned the Zen mind and beginner's mind before, I think.
Don't think we have
Oh, I'm sorry. So Zen Mind, Beginner's
ever.
Mind is a book by Zen masters. One of the most famous books about Zen. I have it on my shelf.
I don't.
It's a
Have you read
really
it?
good small book. Oh yeah, of course I read it. It's really, really, really good. Have you not read that? I'm sorry. I
No,
thought. Wait,
no,
did
we've
you
never
just go
talked about
touch
that.
it?
Go get it, yeah, because those kinds of book I think are very, very accessible, but also very profound.
This is where the
Wow.
beginner's
Okay.
mind's idea comes from.
Okay.
So
Didn't know
from
that.
Shunryu Suzuki, he's a Japanese Zen monk who came to the States, and this was the first one of the first books to start popularizing the idea and philosophies of Zen in English and in other languages. It's translated, it's in French and a bunch of others. I gave it to my mom and my brother for Christmas. They loved it. And it starts with this idea of the beginner's mind, which
Wow. I
says
need
very
to.
well.
I love that idea of beginner's mind. And so while you're finding that, like martial arts for me has been another area where I've had to be beginner's
Right, right.
mind, forced to it.
This one's really good too.
Oh, you've talked about that before.
Yeah,
I haven't read it though, but I do want to read this one.
this is good. Beginner's mind. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts, there are few.
Aha.
And
Aha.
that's what the whole book is
Mm-hmm.
about. Is when you're
Mm-hmm.
and similarly when you're a child, everything is open to you. The more you know about something, the more you have an opinion and a firm place on this. And it takes an effort to place yourself back into this idea of a beginner's mind, where you don't know. And it's the same as placing yourself as in you don't know, which can be an uncomfortable situation, particularly in social situations. But ultimately, it's also similar to going, well, actually, there's just silence right now. It's not because I don't have anything interesting to say, to come back to the question. An interesting place to go, because I don't know how useful this is as well. So it's like, at the same time, I don't want to give only tips and tricks, but at the same time, if we're too high up conceptual, it's not useful to someone, I think, right? To the person asking the question, to anybody else who's dealing with those kinds of, concerns, fears, anxieties, whatever. Not whatever, but just, take a look at what your fears are. Like, go into them.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend as well.
Yeah.
So if you go back to the beginning of the question, what does it say again? It says, what is it?
It says, I'm scared to hang out one-on-one with people. I'm scared they will not find me fun and interesting, and there'll be blanks.
Yeah, so I'm scared they won't find me fun and interesting. Not for the fascination of staying stuck inside your fear, but have a look at it. What is it you're actually afraid of? Also, and if you imagine it or write it down, this is where the power of journaling, because you kind of get it out of your mind, so you're not replaying a horror film in your head all the time. And when you replay the horror film of like the worst situation you could happen, you have all the bodily, you can have all the body functions of fear, like the butterflies or the, so there's and the body feelings. There's a couple of interesting ways to go with that one. Sorry, this is tangent with a tangent probably, but body feelings. So when you're scared, you might have like a knot in your stomach kind of thing, right? I think that's one of the things it said.
A knot in your stomach, like maybe fast beating heart.
Fast beating heart. I mean, if it's really strong, you might feel like a little bit of cold sweats or
sweaty palms.
Sweaty palms, right? Okay. Now, what's interesting is if you manage to think and remember that those body feelings, those experiences are the same for other types of reactions. So if you're falling in love, you might have the same knot in your stomach as when you're scared. So if ever you're not sure, you could just check, okay, wait, I have a knot in my stomach. Am I afraid or am I falling in love? Or is it just I need to go to the bathroom?
Yes. But I mean, that loops back
so this is one that
meditation
de-dramatizes a little bit the body feelings that usually are used to support the fact that your thought is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one.
Yeah.
So that was the tangent with the tangent. And then the other one is just take a look at what's like, have a look, write it down, take an exercise, spend 10 minutes, like what the fear is. What are you really afraid of? What's your worst nightmare scenario? Just write it down. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen in your one-on-one conversation when you have nothing to say? Like, and really, like, just knock yourself out. Take a few minutes and write it out. Write it, because it gets you out of your head, and you will be able to read it back on the page and go, well, that's kind of silly, perhaps, maybe. Because the worst case scenario is the person doesn't like you, I guess, or some form of that. Maybe. No?
And until you look at it, you don't know. And what you're talking about is I read an article about the practice of self-compassion. It was in The Guardian. And one of the things that, and as a way of developing resilience in all this lockdown, whatever, that turning towards and having a look at and examining and unpicking what is it that I'm worried about, afraid of, whatever. And it is a way of actually beginning to own what's going on with you, and a way of actually letting go of giving yourself such a hard time all the time, which I also think is going on in this question.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that is really a good point for us to tackle as well, is don't give yourself such a hard time.
Which is easy.
Nobody's actually asking you to have really interesting things to say all the time. And I would be the kind of person that would also it does happen to me. I would berate myself to go, okay, well, am I being interesting? Is this person enjoying our time? Now, the truth is, most of the time, I don't really wonder about that. I might on dates, maybe. But yeah, I've relaxed a lot. I've also relaxed a lot about it. I'm not too bothered anymore.
Stakes are higher when you get married. It's more like sometimes I find myself thinking, what did I say? What did I do? Oh my God, is she okay? Did I say something wrong? And sometimes my wife and I will check in with each other. I'll say to her like, what's the phrase? The phrase is something like, have I upset you? Did I annoy you? Or I was worried that I said something that upset you. And she'd be like, no, it's fine. And just it's a way of kind of keeping ourselves on a level.
That's a good one as well to check in.
Yeah,
Because typically you won't know what you've said if you've upset her. And you might notice she's upset. You don't know how long it's been.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you've said.
This was so.
And then the caricature is like the partner says, "Well, of course you've upset
I'm fine.
me. You should know." You're like,
yeah, it is, and we've gone another level where sometimes I will say something and I'm not aware that what I'm saying is a dig,
right?
And she will call me out on it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like that's from we've been married. Oh my God, we got married in 2007. Wow. So it takes a long time and it takes practice, but it's hard. It's hard to do the first time you do it because it's vulnerable. But the other side of the vulnerability and being all that is the Brené Brown's talk about vulnerabilities. That's where the sense of connection and being with someone is when you really open up. But it's challenging because we want to stay safe and look good and not risk anything.
Yeah.
Multiplied now, the looking good with like comparing, like you were saying, is this Insta ready? Does this look cool? Like, am I like, did my
taking a break and slowing down from social media can also help. Or if you're doing the exercise to look at what you're concerned with, what you're afraid of, what you're anxious about in terms of being one-on-one with people, or actually we can extrapolate that with any kind of social setting. Taking a look if there's any kind of concerns with social media or anybody that maybe just cutting back a little bit might be useful. Maybe, I don't know, depending if you write anything and find out that, are you actually finding yourself to be anxious when you're scrolling whatever app that you use? Or are you literally escaping from anything that you're anxious about, which is another interesting one too.
I did want to ask you something else, which is you talked about the blinkers, and you said earlier on about like when you say I am, you're closing yourself off to other things. I think what do you think about the whole world, and this is going to go deeper, of when you say something, it limits the experience. If I say,
so this is a tough one to go into, right?
Yeah.
Particularly, so I don't know. Sorry, what was the end of the question? Sorry, I was just
when I say I am a particular way, I'm limiting my experience. Or if I say I'm not very good one-on-one, what could that do for my sense of myself? That sounded very deep.
It did, and I don't know how much we can really dig into this kind of stuff. This is the type of work that's the fruit of like participating in courses, actually like following and being followed with coaches and or therapy, possibly, depending what kind of therapy you get into, if it's a kind to look at how you are. But anyway, sorry, to come back to your question, if you think I'm not good on one-on-one, now I'm not sure how to answer the question anymore. Sorry, tell me the question again. What are you asking me?
I don't think I've worded the question very well. Is it? I think what I'm pointing to is when we say I am not very good one-on-one.
Oh, okay. So
maybe it's not true.
Yes, maybe it's not true. There's a couple of things. So every time you say I am a certain way, or every time you hear somebody say you are a certain way, you might want to consider that it reinforces the way things are. It might be true, but true is only by virtue of you repeating the thing and you behaving in certain ways. And if you say I'm not very good at one-on-one, and if you think it, and then it reinforces, and then it gets into a circle, and then you might feel uncomfortable, and then you use your feelings of being uncomfortable, that's what I mentioned earlier, to justify the fact that you're not very good at one-on-one. So that's why you kind of need something to break that cycle. And all of what we're talking about before are opportunities or ideas to possibly break the cycle that are not tips and tricks to hide and put on top of it, like the game techniques. Now, you could go peacocking, sure. That means like that's one of the things in the pickup artist. It's just like dressed as a magician or with a giant purple feather. I don't know, like, something to be very, very noticeable, which is cool. And you may well have people ask you questions, but if you've not done anything to understand a little bit and to look into what your fears are and why you think you're somebody that's not good on one-on-one, then you're missing out. And you're only just hiding the stuff that you feel uncomfortable about. And I'm not saying you need to tell everybody what you're uncomfortable about at all. It's just like, tell your journal. And the thing of writing it down, it's surprising how much, or typing it, whatever. It's surprising and it's amazing when you do it. So one, there's a bit of self-conscious that you need to get over by when you journal.
Yeah.
Who am I writing this to? It doesn't really matter when you read it. If you read it back or once you get it out, it's surprising how much it just releases stuff from what's going on in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it de-dramatizes a lot of the stuff that you take very seriously about yourself because you believe them to be true.
Yep.
And the things you believe and hold to be true, then they perpetuate. They keep happening this way. And now if you say you're somebody that's not very good on one-on-one, I'm not even sure what that actually means. Does that mean you're better in a group setting? What's funny is I find the group setting more difficult to understand than the one-on-one, even though I like the group setting, but that's the one where I would have more opportunities to wonder, am I participating? Are people noticing me? I don't really think that anymore, to be honest, but.
Like being at a party, that whole dynamic.
Oh, being at a party? Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it's just, hanging out in a corner. Am I being in the right? It's just, did you watch Booksmart?
I think is that the one with the two girls?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was surprisingly good. That was surprisingly good.
Yes.
Watch Booksmart is another
it's really good. Really,
fun
really
way to de-dramatize, but have a lot of the stuff that teenagers deal with. And it's a fun teenage party movie, but it's surprisingly also very smart and very moving.
Yeah, it is. It is. I really love that film. As we've had a few people recommend it to us as a.
I watched it on Amazon Prime.
Surprisingly good.
We did. Remember if it's Amazon Prime or Netflix.
Yeah, we did as well. It was Amazon Prime. Surprisingly good exploration and articulation of all the concerns and how you might deal with them, and all of that, all of this, and it's an exploration. I think that's the thing I enjoy is and part of the reason I enjoy these conversations is that it's the exploration. You never know what you might discover when you speak to someone.
Yeah,
and approaching it that way can be interesting.
Sure, and to keep answering, if you think that you're not very good on one-on-one,
yeah.
I don't know what that means, because it could mean a lot of different things on your personality traits and what you say about yourself that justifies it. Is it because you're shy? Is it because you're reserved? I mean, it might be the same thing.
Well, it's at the very beginning of the question is that very powerful statement. I'm scared to hang out one-on-one with people. I think that I'm sure Heidegger talks about it, but my most recent, have you read Conversations with God? Have you read those series of books?
I heard about it. I've not read it.
Yeah, I read them quite a few years ago, but I think they're really accessible, really interesting books about spirituality and being, really. I found it chimed a lot with my experience of journaling and meditation and self-development work. And the premise of it is that a guy starts writing and then he ends up that he's in a conversation with God and he just writes it all down. He felt like the conversations were coming to him. And which is a very interesting premise and idea. And one of the things he talks about in the book is how powerful the statement I am is. I am that way, I am whatever, is a very powerful way because it creates and can create so much. So if someone's saying I am scared to hang out one-on-one with people, everything you're saying is about digging underneath that. But that statement I am it's easy to forget how powerful that is and how often we say things like that. I am this way, therefore I can't. Yeah. And the blinkers go on. Yeah.
And I would also say for the person asking the question, or for whoever has those kinds of concerns that we're talking about, try out opening up to somebody that you're comfortable with. There must be at least one person that you'd consider being comfortable enough. I mean, maybe there isn't one person, but work up to it with all the stuff that we talked about before, with one person that you might feel comfortable opening up and say that you have that kind of concern about yourself. Because I think the bigger thing, and we touched upon it because we automatically went there talking about romantic relationships, your marriage. If you're afraid of being one-on-one with people, and the most common I was going to say, like, just, I don't know, society culturally established thing is couples. Well, also if you want to, it's very stupid, but if you want to procreate, that you don't need to stay in a couple, but you do need another person at some point. Well, technically you don't, because you could get a baby anyway.
It's true.
But, you know,
yeah.
But you know, the convention is two people. Whatever gender preference you have, or whatever's going on there, there's two people. It's one-on-one. Now, there's polyamory, and that's a whole other ballgame. But even in polyamory, at some point or another, you're going to be one-on-one conversations with people. So the what's at stake is you're cutting yourself off from those kinds of opportunities, let alone, I mean, and actually I was going there with couples, but book smart and your best friend is also a thing that tends to be one-on-one conversations.
Yeah.
And one-on-one relationships. And there's something there you can get to. I believe I like group settings and I like big parties. But one thing you don't have in big parties is the kind of depth of conversation that we have now, or that you have with one-on-one.
Yeah.
In a group setting, it's a very different experience. So it's pleasant. I love big parties. I love the conversations I have randomly with jumping from one person to another, going dancing, grabbing drinks and all that. The activity, the excitement and everything else. But to really dig into a topic, whatever that might be, whether we're analyzing an episode of a TV show or whatever, or you know, the conversations we have for an hour. And that's part of the reason I like the listening to long form interviews, because they really get somewhere and you get an experience of the person, what they know, who they are. So I guess, I hope it's not daunting what I'm saying to the person asking the question, but there's if you look at things from the other perspective, beyond your fear, there's tons of stuff to be had. There's tons of fun to be had with another person, to find out more about them, to share your passions with, to dig in deep into topics, to be able to have a dialogue. So you bounce off your ideas off of someone rather than having them in your head. And we've spent, I think I've spent a lot of time on my own, and we probably, depending on your living situations, we either spent a lot of time on top of other people, family, roommates, etc. in the past year. Or a lot of time on your own, or an alternate, or like alternating both of those things, and being able to exchange with one other person it's wonderful.
You've made me think about something that's, I think, relates to this.
I'm saying this like just well enough to say that it's awesome beyond your fear. There's an opportunity to interact with people that is just phenomenal.
Yeah, well said. I think there's something else within what you're saying. It is well said, but I don't know why you're surprised. You say cool stuff.
I don't know. I was like, I don't think that was really well said. That's what
I do.
Okay, great.
Okay. So I think you've made me think of something else in what you're saying, which is getting comfortable one-on-one is much easier within a mutual interest group. So like a group of tabletop gamers, or a group of people into heavy metal, or a group of people who play guitar, or a group of whatever it is, like, West Wing fans. And podcasts really open up that world. I can't believe how many odd, weird, obscure things there are out there in the internet. I found
everything and anything, and groups on Facebook and Discord.
This amazing YouTube channel where she's a musician. She plays piano. Most of her videos, what she's doing is taking a song by 9 Inch Nails and then analyzing the musical theory behind it.
Genius. That's perfect for you.
It's amazing.
How long are the episodes?
So the first one I watched was a 15-20 minute episode about March of the Pigs. There's a 45-minute episode about the song Closer, which is probably 9 Inch Nails' most famous song. 45 minutes. just that one song.
And she's
Looking
just
at
doing a monologue. I mean, not in a monologue. She's
yeah,
like going into
yeah.
real
She's sitting there
details of
with
the
her
music.
piano, taking apart the different intervals and chords and chord sequences and production and music production, how it's used, the drum beat. That like, it's so good. It's so good. I can't get over how brilliant it is, and I absolutely love it. And it's also enhancing my understanding of music theory and my guitar playing, but giving me a deeper appreciation
Yeah.
for one of my favorite bands. And it's so obscure, it's so odd, but it's brilliant.
But this is awesome, and I think we touched upon it. There's another way to talk about it before the end of the episode on picking up interests. Now, there's the other thing that says, like, to be interesting, be interested. Of course, be interested in the other person, so that beyond your fears, just go and ask questions. Like, stupid, but this is like a most super obvious kind of way to. You're like, oh, there's ask a blank.
Questions,
I'm feeling. Well, just if you
and then listen.
And then listen. Yeah, I mean, this is easier said than done, but still. But there's something to be said also, because we talked about doing interesting stuff, reading, etc. But doing it from there's an active standpoint. That's I don't know how else to say it. It's a little bit easily said. But what I meant is, like we touched upon, like maybe you're spending too much time on social media, maybe you're spending too much time watching TV shows. I mean, particularly if you're droning out and you're doing stuff that is mindless, you're mindlessly, passively just spending time
doom scrolling,
or your mind's fallen asleep 3 episodes ago of the TV show that you're watching, and you're just watching it to spend time. Find something where you can spend active, just, I don't know, something that is really interesting to you, either something that you're learning, something that you're practicing, something that you're doing. And I do a lot of this. Like, mindless is great. I mean, I do a lot of that. I don't take enough notes when I'm reading. I'm just starting to get into that. I'm just absorbing a lot of stuff, and then sometimes regurgitating them on conversations like this.
But you're very
there's
good
something
at
to be said with
things.
active. I am, but there's something to be said on being active in whatever hobby interest that you're doing, because social media on one hand, TV, Netflix on another, are all sorts of things that are turning us into just, drooling products to watch and be served advertising to, in order to keep their machine going. Now, it's kind of a little bit, I've said it purposely a little bit in the dark fashion, but it's kind of true. Like this thing from the Silicon Valley, they say, if it's free, you're the product.
Yeah.
I mean, even if Netflix is not free, you're still the product. So you could be watching Netflix, or Netflix could just consider you as a subscriber. And as long as you have it on, whether you're alive or dead or drooling, doesn't really matter much. And as long as you're just scrolling on your TikTok, you can be served advertising to. There's a world of difference between just spending 3 hours scrolling TikTok or whatever, Instagram, or creating your own videos to post on TikTok and trying to do something funny. And as we usually challenge your students to do, like actually just go and make millions and see how that is. Yeah. But you don't have to do TikTok videos, but you get my meanings. Like whatever you're doing, do it something that's going to be active. If you're reading a book, then tends to be active. It gets your mind.
Do you also mean like the act of creation, or just active in general?
No, creation can help, but it might be practice, like you're learning the guitar. So I think it's something that has your brain switched on.
Oh, this is
TikTok
play.
Switches your brain off.
Bringing play to it.
Yeah, bringing play to it. Sure, absolutely.
Because that's what happens when I'm playing guitar. It's a fully, and at the same time I have to be very active, and I can't see. Guitarists are classic for this. You can just sit there and noodle and on a guitar,
right?
But it's not doing anything. But if I do this, I actually say, okay, there's the Pearl Jam song "Alive." Do you know that song? So the solo at the end. I'm
sure I do if I listen to it. I don't like my memory for names of songs. It's not something. So
there's
that important to me.
Huge guitar solo at the end. I'm spending about 15 minutes every day breaking up and working out by listening to it, the guitar solo, and it's intensive, active, intentional stuff. And it's taken me about 4 or 5 sections of 15 minutes to work out about 10 seconds. but it's so massively enjoyable for me. But that kind of active experience is immersive, and it's not just doom scrolling. And that's my individual version. You'll have yours, and maybe you get it from computer games or role-playing games, but everybody has that thing, and taking time to discover what it might be, I think, is really great way of growing.
Of ending the episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great way of growing and ending the episode. And I was going to add, watching one of our episodes could be a way of stimulating your thought processes and ideas and thinking.
Yeah, particularly if you think to take notes, because I know this is something that you may a lot of people listen to back stuff like conversations like these or podcasts in the background while you're doing something else, which is fine. Just, but if there's any value in it, so this could be value as background noise, or it could be value as, I heard something interesting. Let me write it down and try this thing out.
Get a journal.
Start meditating. This is like the stuff we keep repeating in every single episode.
Well, I think that's because it's worth repeating. This was a good
question, by the way. This was a good question.
Yeah, it's worth repeating though. Get a journal, read books, start meditating. Is that it?
Yeah,
Play. Yeah. Willem and James's Teaching Tangents top 4 tips for universal success. Oh dear. Oh my God. We just become a parody of some
universal
rubbish.
Success. What?
I just made that. Well, we have to write a listicle article and then post it so it goes viral, and then everyone
That's
comes.
the thing. I just don't. I don't do. Maybe I should. I should totally do that. But there's a lot of things I should be doing for promotion, and I'm not doing. Man,
I get bored of listicles. They're just.
I hate them. I've got bored of it more ages ago.
Well, it depends. To be fair, there are some I quite like, but most I don't like, because I'm considering posting a listicle on my blog soon. But anyway.
Yeah. And I think I'm considering making some, because nobody reads long form stuff or listens to hour-long conversations.
Oh, you do? I do.
I do. This is why I'm doing it also. Well, one, I enjoy having the conversations, and I actually listen to hour-long or more podcasts. So I'm like, all right, I am the target audience for my own stuff. So it makes sense. At least.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.